You're listening to Left Up the Valley 2.0, Atheist, Skeptic, and Humanist Radio.
Anyway, let's move on.
Yeah.
Sabrina, you got a top 10 for us?
I do.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Wasn't sure if you did there.
Yes, I did. Yeah. I took actually your advice and I went and looked at history.
You took my advice?
I did.
It's not about whales and dolphins, because apparently
No,
that's
it's
what we're
not
doing
about whales
now.
and dolphins, but
You
it is
never
about
take my advice.
it is about our second chit chat to some extent.
Okay.
This is a really stupid protest going on in Canada, and I really don't see it going anywhere because, well, anyway, let's not go into that. But I thought, there got to be some protests that changed history, so I went and found some.
Oh,
Nice.
So these are 10 protests that actually changed history.
nice.
Nice.
I'm giving credit to buzzworthy.com because that's where I found this list.
Okay.
So, number 10, the storming of the Bastille.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had to go way back for this one.
Yeah.
But on July 14th,
Going to the French Revolution? Yeah, that's a bit way back.
Yeah, on July 14th, 1789, a mob of Parisians stormed the Bastille, which, of course, was a symbol of royal authority and luxury. They beheaded the governor, and they sparked the French Revolution. So what happened after that was a decade-long rebellion against the crown, and it led to the monarchy being overthrown and a republic being established.
Yeah.
Until
actually,
Napoleon, of course.
Yeah. And the French Revolution was also one of the models that was used for the American Revolution. So, but they forgot to bring those good old guillotine in the U.S.
Yeah,
so
they needed the guillotine.
maybe we should bring back the guillotine.
They should have beheaded somebody in the U.S.
Good.
So, number 9 is one actually that I didn't really know about, so it's kind of interesting. Gandhi's Salt March.
Oh, of course.
So in the 30s, of course, salt was heavily taxed in India. So in protest, Gandhi went on a 241-mile march across Western India. His goal was to collect salt from the sea in defiance of the British government. And of course, his march inspired hundreds of Indians to refuse to pay the tax. And then, of course, he got arrested for his efforts. But the Salt March established him as a force to be reckoned with the struggles India had against British colonizers.
Okay, so it's safe to say that they were very salty about this.
Just a little bit.
Bang, bang. 5 points for that. There's one thing that people never understand about the whole Gandhi situation. Yeah, the British were dealing with Gandhi, but the British decided to deal with Gandhi because while Gandhi was also doing that, there was a much more violent faction of Indians attacking the British as well.
Yeah.
So they would rather deal with the more peaceful one than deal with the more violent ones.
Yeah. Gandhi's mission was, of course, to just peacefully protest and show that you can make change peacefully.
Exactly.
So, number 8 is the March on Washington on August 28th, 1963.
Ooh.
So, unlike this pathetic march on Canada's capital, in 1963, more than 200,000 supporters marched on D.C., calling for legislation to address systemic racism against people of color, especially the black population in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
During the march, of course, Martin Luther King Jr. gave his "I Have a Dream" speech at the base of the Lincoln Memorial, and it's been credited with building support for the Civil Rights Act of 1964.
No doubt.
And the Voting Rights Act of 1965.
No doubt.
I can't find my tongue today. It just won't move. Yeah,
I
well,
think it's in your mouth.
wake up. Number 7 is the Selma to Montgomery March, which was on March 4th, 1964. So that was just a few months after the March on Washington. And while facing brutal opposition from the police, 8,000 activists marched from Selma, Alabama to the state's capital of Montgomery to demand black voter rights. This march led to President Johnson passing the Voter Rights Act, which of course forced all of the states in the U.S. to register black voters.
Nice.
Yeah, I think there's video of that one. It's pretty
It
brutal.
is brutal. With the
Yeah.
water
I was
cannons
like,
and
wow.
everything, it is brutal.
Yeah.
Just from trying to walk from this place to that place. That's it. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, 50
Jesus.
miles just to get, some
Do not pass
recognition as
go. Do not
people.
collect $200.
Also notes that they closed down some of the highway with that march, which means that closing down highways with marches is historically correct.
Yes.
Right.
Looking at you, 94.
So, number 6 are the Take Back the Night marches, which started in the 70s and they continue to this day. So these are the marches. People come out and march against violence against women.
Oh, nice.
And they're usually
that.
organized as a direct response to specific murders of women. So, quite frankly, I wish they didn't have to happen at all. But they often happen on school, like university campuses. And it's basically saying, give us the right to walk around without fearing being raped or murdered.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Seems so simple, right?
Yeah.
I know. It's like it's crazy that we
Well,
even have to do this.
I saw a list. I should bring it out. I don't know if there's 10 of them, though, but it's ways to not get raped. And it's like, don't go out and rape women. And
If
That's it.
men spend like 5 minutes with a woman, and as she walks to her car, and she could say out loud everything she's thinking, they would be flabbergasted. Because
Yeah.
I could walk around all the time without even thinking for a second I'm going to be jumped. But women have a plan. They go from that column to that column, and the keys in their hand, and then to that car, and then behind. Yeah,
Wow.
it's insane. It's absolutely insane to live in that world of fear, and I really feel bad for women they have to do that.
I've been followed. I mean, it happens.
That was me.
No. I mean, yes, but no. Anyways, number 5 is the Tiananmen Square March
Oof,
in May of
yes.
June,
Yes.
May and June of 1989.
You remember that guy standing in front of the tank?
Yeah, that's one of many photos that are just very iconic from that day or from that time. So, starting in mid 1989, of course, China had a series of peaceful protests in favor of democratic reform. So that was happening in Tiananmen Square. So by June 4th, 1989, there was at least 1 million protesters that were peacefully occupying the square. And without any provocation at all, the government sent in tanks to open fire. There's we're never going to know how many people were killed that day. But the massacre, of course, has been captured by the famous photo of a single man facing off against a line of government tanks.
To this day, we don't know who that man was.
Nope.
Apparently, rumor is that he was quickly arrested by the authorities and executed. But
I'm
we don't
sure
know.
he was.
We don't know. He's an unknown hero.
So number 4 is South Africa's National Day of Protest, which was on June
Oh.
26, 1950. So sometimes it's more effective not to hit the streets and protest. Nelson Mandela's African National Congress called on workers to stay home in protest of the apartheid government's proposal to introduce a law that would allow it to investigate and potentially prohibit any political organization. So hundreds of thousands of South Africans took part in the stay-at-home protest, and the method was so impactful that it's been used several times over in the next decade.
Nice.
That's kind of an interesting, God, we should just do that here.
Well, they try to do that.
Yeah.
Lobby for a 4-day work week. All of us just stay home on Fridays. And be like, no, we're not. No.
I'm good with that.
4-day work week. We're just going to stay home. You were going to say something?
No, I think it's a great idea, but unfortunately, I also think that people have a tendency to not participate in these things until they are miserable enough.
That's true.
If you're not going to participate, if your life is it's okay, then they're not going to care. They have to be like really, really affected for them to actually get off the couch.
Yeah. Number 3 is the Monday demonstrations. So these went on from October 9th, 1989 to November 9th, 1989. So what happened is on Monday, October 9th, 1989, hundreds of Germans gathered in Leipzig, I think.
Yep.
I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. To peacefully protest the communist regime. So the next week, thousands more gathered in other cities throughout East Germany. The Monday demonstrations continued every single week until November 9th, 1989, when the Berlin Wall fell. So,
Yep.
Number 2 is Euromaidan, which happened from November 21st, 2013 to February 22nd, 2014. This is after the Orange Revolution of 2004. Kiev's main square has set the scene for another huge protest in the winter of 2013 and 14. So when hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians protested the government's refusal to sign an agreement associating Ukraine with the European Union. The government snipers opened fire on the protesters who camped out in Maidan Square and used makeshift shields and burning tires to create smoke screen against the snipers. Meanwhile, Russian forces annexed Crimea from the Ukraine and combined Russian separatist forces and sparked the war in the east of the country, which continues until today.
Yeah, how apropos, right?
Yeah, of what's going on.
What's going on right now?
They were
Yeah.
using snipers on a crowd?
On protesters.
Jesus Christ. That's fucking nuts. Jeez.
Yeah.
Wow, that's awful.
And so the number one is the Arab Spring, which happened from December 2010 to October 2013.
I remember that.
Yeah, so this started in Tanzania in December 2010. So they saw a string of political demonstrations and revolts. The most famous probably happened in Tahrir, which is Liberation Square, in January 2011, where more than a million where more than a million Egyptians gathered to force President Mubarak to step down. But protests rang throughout North Africa and the Middle East for several years. The Tanzanian fruit vendor who started it all and the hundreds of thousands that followed his lead inspired Time magazine to name the protester their person of the year in 2011.
Wow. A lot of these protests are actually fairly recent. I'm actually quite impressed by this list.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
we're still fighting.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect.
Change isn't happening sometimes, but we're still fighting. And one that I didn't mention that I think we should, because it's actually a bunch of protests, are the movement that happened after George Floyd's murder.
Oh, yeah.
Because we're seeing change happen since then, and I think it's going to continue.
Yeah.
So, I'm seeing it happen, and I've said it before. It's happening a lot in the media. You see it change on mainstream television.
That
Crime
is
dramas
true.
are changing. Hospital dramas are changing. A lot of the drama that TV that happens at prime time is changing. It's including people just being gay for being gay. They're not like, oh, look at us, we're gay. It's just like, oh, I'm going home to my husband.
Yeah.
And it's just like normal. And they're normalizing change in like police dramas. And they're like, okay, let's show it that we're changing it. Anyway, that's where change starts. Think of Golden Girls and allowing talking about AIDS and talking about all those things that they brought to light in the 80s, and that's what brings change. So hopefully we're starting to see,
or even more recent than that, the what was that show, a musical Glee?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
they were credited for helping a lot of the LGBT
Mhm.
community, making just normalizing things.
Yes, exactly.